Well, good morning and welcome to all. Welcome to the virtual launch of the JPI Cultural Heritage's new Strategic Research and Invention Agenda. I am Charles Giry de Loison. I am one of the two vice chairs of the JPI, the second one being Catherine Warren, to whom we shall be listening at 10:40, and have the pleasure of being your host this morning. The official launch of the SRIA will take place at 10:30. In the meantime, I'd like to invite you to answer a couple of short questions in the survey, which we have poetically named the Kickoff Fun, and then join the quiz on cultural heritage anecdotes. To do so, you need first to edit your profile by clicking on the profile icon on the right-hand top corner of the screen, then on Edit My Profile. Once you've done that, please fill in your name. You can actually use an alias if you prefer. And if you wish, you can answer the two other questions, which are facultative. So let's start with the Kickoff Fun survey. To join this survey, once you've edited your profile, following the instructions I've just given you, you need to click on polls in the orange band on the right-hand side of the screen. Everything seems to happen on the right-hand side for the moment, but you'll have things on the left-hand side soon. So once you've clicked on polls, you'll come up to these 4 questions. They're just 4 questions to answer, and we'll be really delighted to know more about you. If you'd like others to have the possibility of getting in touch with you, you can leave some information on yourself in the second question, and we'll publish it in the live streaming. So the questions are, from where in the world are you joining us? This is to give us an idea of the diverse variety of countries you are coming from. The second question, which is mainly optional, is to let the others know more about you. So you can give your name or alias if you prefer, but name would be good if you want to get in touch with people, your profession, the institution where you work, your email address eventually, and if you are, like most people tend to be nowadays, on social media. The third question is, why did you decide to attend this event? You have there been given several possibilities. You want to learn more about the SRA. You came for the speakers, and quite honestly, I'm very sad that nobody added for the host, but actually nobody asked me. So, networking opportunities, or I think you could ask if my boss has made me to join. And finally, the fourth question is, what is the strangest thing you have done whilst attending a meeting online? Then again, you've got different possibilities, options to show how creative one can be, or maybe how invasive online work can be as well. Have you eaten breakfast? Have you worn pajamas? Have you cooked lunch or supper? Have you brushed your teeth? Have you watched Netflix? Or have you done other things that you would prefer not to be known? So please take time to answer these 4 questions. We shall give ourselves a few minutes to do so, and then we shall go and look at the answers to see what has come up. I think we're all particularly interested to know who from where you're coming, because it of course is a very important point. Here we are. Here are some first answers coming up, and look at the numbers of different countries are coming up. From Belgium, Norway, Romania, the UK, the Netherlands, Scotland, you see, and different towns, Leuven, Oxford is always nice to know, Paris, of course, The Hague, Latvia. So we are getting responses throughout Europe, and that is obviously very, very encouraging for all of us, and it shows the importance of cultural heritage and what the JPI can do for linking people throughout Europe around cultural heritage. So this were the answers. I think probably more. Spain is coming in now. Sweden, I've just seen going past. Portugal. So yes, we are getting people literally from practically every country in Europe. Absolutely fabulous. That is great, great news. Now we have the second question, and the first answers are coming in for these questions as well. We've got very different profiles on the screen for the moment. We've got a police officer in Brussels, obviously probably working for the European Commission, university people, people from Italy, public administration, professors at the Montfort University, researchers in Norway. We've got people in Belgium as well. So there again, a great variety of answers, a great variety of jobs and profiles, and they are now, you'll see all of them on the screen coming in slowly. Norway's there. A lot of people from Norway. Going a bit fast so I could read at the same time. Latvia, there we are. Loen Centre for Global Governance. The Raymond Lemaire International Centre for Conservation, which we all know. Well, thank you very much for having answered that question. It gives us a very good idea of your profile. Question number 3. So here we had different possibilities. Why did you decide to attend this event? Well, luckily enough, the main answer is because I wanted to learn more about the SRA. I'd be slightly concerned if it was my boss who made me join, but we do have 4% of people answering that question, so I do hope you enjoy the event nevertheless. Networking opportunities, of course, is something important, and I think the JPI can be of great help for that, and this occasion obviously should be. And pleased also to see that a lot of you came for the speakers, because we have actually very distinguished speakers today, and we're very honoured to have them on board with us this morning. So here we are. And here we are, the last 4th question on what is the strangest thing you have done whilst attending a meeting online. Well, everybody seems to be watching the online thing wearing their pajamas. Well, what a world. Breakfast, yes, well, I suppose it will depend what time the event happens, but breakfast was, well, I suppose, still considered 10 o'clock French time or 9 o'clock English time as breakfast time for some. Lunch or dinner, maybe not quite yet. And brushing's one teeth, well, why not? What is quite surprising is that nobody watches Netflix at the same time that they follow an online conference. I don't quite believe that from my own experience. I would have thought that is not quite true, but nevertheless. Anyhow, thank you very much for answering those questions, and I hope that all those will join us as long as we keep on going. We'll get more answers as they come in. I think now we can slowly move on to the second part of this introduction and have a look at the quiz, our cultural heritage anecdotes quiz. Before starting the quiz, I'd just like a quick message for those who have just joined us. You do need to edit your profile to be able to follow the event and join us on this quiz. You do need to edit your profile by clicking on the profile icon on the top right-hand corner of the screen, then on editing my profile. And once you've done that, well, please fill in your name, and if you wish, answer the 2 other questions. One is about your email address, and the other one, I think, is about the company you work in. Once you've done that, you go to the polls and you join us on the cultural heritage anecdotes. So let's start. Let's start with these anecdotes. The quiz consists of 10 statements, or questions if you prefer, to be answered by true or false. They cover a wide range of variety of cultural heritage features throughout the GPI network. So here we are. The first question is, Ørns Stave Church, one of the oldest stave churches in Norway, has not been in use since the 19th century. Is this true or false? So let's take a few seconds to think and answer. I'll give a bit of information about urns and about stave churches. Urns is situated in the Sonjorforge in the west coast of Norway. So dreadfully sorry about my pronunciation. And it was built about around 1130. And in Norwegian, stave means a sturdy wooden columns which uphold the overall architectural structure. So if you look at this church, it's a typical example, of course, it's this church consists of the most elaborate, technologically advanced types of wooden constructions that exist in northwestern Europe. They were all built in the medieval ages. And there are about 1,300 medieval churches indexed, and about 28 are preserved in Norway today. And the other main fixture is the wood carving and sculpted decor on the outside. And the carvings are important both as outstanding artistic artifacts and as a link between the pre-Christian Nordic culture and the Christianity of the medieval ages. So, and as you last point, you can see that they're built on a wooden, entirely built of wood on a very classical basilica plan. So, and you can see the planks of wood consist of the walls. So here are the answers. Is it true or false? Well, I'm pleased to see that majority of you thought it was false, and that is absolutely exact. It is exact that the church has not been in daily or ordinary use since 1881, but special ceremonies such as baptisms, weddings and funerals are still held in it. So thank you and bravo for those finding the right answer. Our second question is coming up, the Mediterranean dart. It is listed by UNESCO as an intangible cultural heritage and is based on dartry traditions of Cyprus, Croatia, Spain, Greece, Italy, Morocco and Portugal. Is that true or false? Then again, let's take a few seconds to think about it. Well, you know that the interest in Mediterranean dart started in the 1960s when studies found that the dart was associated with reduced risk factors for cardiovascular disease. So what is this Mediterranean dart? Well, it's typically high in vegetables, as you can see by the picture here, photograph, fruit, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, and of course, olive oil. So daily consumption of vegetables and fruits, weekly intake of fish, moderate portions of dairy products, limited intake of red meat, of course, olive oil as a primary source of added fat. And two other important elements of the Mediterranean diet, which one should never forget, is sharing meals with family and friends and enjoying a glass of red wine and being physically active. Sharing meals with family and friends is a bit what the JPI brings us to do, sharing our knowledge on cultural heritage. So what are the answers? Well, yes, again, majority have found the right answer true. In 2008, Greece, Italy, Morocco and Spain submitted the transnational nomination file to UNESCO. They were later joined by Cyprus, Portugal and Croatia, and so now 7 countries who are part of this intangible cultural heritage, the Mediterranean diet. So again, bravo for your answers. Let's move on to the third question. The third question is about Venice. Venice is made up of 5 islands, yes or no? Well, when we look at this photograph, it's quite interesting, these 2 arms and hands coming out of the water and climbing up the wall. This reminds us, if need may be, that since the creation of the Biennale of Venice in 1895, Venice is not only famous for its artistic heritage, but also it's a hub for contemporary art. Peggy Guggenheim in the 1950s, François Pinault's collection and other works since 2012 at the Old Custom House at the Palazzo Greci. The Prada Foundation since 2011 in an 18th century palazzo, the Corner della Regina, if I pronounce it well. And of course, numerous art galleries open in Venice since the mid-1990s. So we've got a different view of Venice. Venice as a very, very old city, very beautiful city, but very also as a hub of contemporary art and very vivid and vibrant contemporary arts. I wonder what answers we've got for Venice. How many islands? Oh, well, there was slight hesitation there between true and false. False is the right answer, because actually Venice comprises 118 small islands. Islands, of course, of different sizes, but mainly very small, all separated by canals and linked by more than 400 bridges. So there we are. There's not only the Pont des Soupirs. So thanks for those answers. Question number 4. Here we are, completely different. Baltic songs festivals, considered to be intangible cultural heritage, only include traditional music of the Baltic states. True or false? Well, these Baltic song festivals, of course, are to be found in Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Songs festivals started in different European countries in the mid-19th century, in Switzerland and Germany, but also in Wales, for example, through choral societies. In the Baltic states, they were first held, I think, in Estonia in 1869, and then in Latvia in 1973, and at last in Lithuania in 1924. And they are immensely popular events with often tens of thousands of singers and dancers, and here you've got just a few of them in traditional costume. And they are held not every day, but not every year, but every 5 years in Estonia and Latvia, and every 4 in Lithuania. And not so long ago, these festivals were a major place for political protest. In Wales, in some ways, which I won't involve here, but also in Baltic states against communism. And they, in the late 1980s, songs became an integral part of the independence movement, if you remember, what was called the singing revolution at the end of the Cold War, and particularly in Estonia from 1988, 1989. So what answers have we got here? Well, yes, you're quite right. It is false. Mostly the participants belong to amateur choirs and dance groups, and their repertoires cover all musical forms from ancient folk songs to contemporary compositions, so it is not just traditional music. Thank you. Let's go to question number 5. Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian Wall separated the Roman Empire from unconquered territories of Spain, that is Spain and Portugal. Is that true or false? Well, those who know Hadrian's Wall, it runs about 120 kilometers or 73, 74 miles. And as you can see, it has a stone base and a stone wall, though part of it at the start was actually built in turf, not totally stone for the whole length of it. The turf was then after that replaced by stone. And today a significant portion of the wall still stands, and you can follow it on foot, and it's an interesting wall to do. It's like all these walls, not of the same size, not of the same width or all along its length, but it goes from just under 4 meters, just over to 6 meters high, depending on the portions, and between 3 to 6 meters wide, with ditches and forts and middle castles, what called mile castles, a castle every mile, at about 80 of them. The wall had a defensive role, but it was also a gate for a custom post, because Roman power actually extended beyond the wall, and so crossing the wall was something that happened daily. Do we have any answers for the moment? Yes, we do. So what comes up the most? False. Yes, that is quite true. This is a false statement, and the wall actually separates. It was constructed at the north of England, but it's not the boundary between England and Scotland. Okay, let's pass to question number 6. Martisor, and please forgive me for my pronunciation. Martisor A talisman made of red and white string with hanging tassel is exchanged during the April in Moldavia and Romania for good wishes. So what do we know about that? Yes, is it true or false? Well, Martisor, if it's the right way to pronounce it, traces its history back more than 8,000 years. Some believe it was a celebration, the celebration had Roman origins, whilst others support the theory that is an old Daco-Tracian tradition. In ancient Rome, it was linked to the god of war, and therefore the red and white colours may also be a reference to the colours of war and peace. In older times, Martisor talismans were made of small river pebbles, and they were coloured white and red, stringed on the thread, and they were worn around the neck. But sometimes also they were hung on tree branches, and in both cases they were worn and used to bring good luck and good weather. Do we know what answers we're getting? Well, here we are. I think you've got it wrong. It is not actually quite true. The right answer is false. Why? Well, the word martisor derives from mart, the old folk name for March, and thus literally means little March. Martisors are exchanged to celebrate the beginning of spring, and usually always on the 1st of March in Romania, and it is a UNESCO intangible cultural heritage celebration. So the right answer is false. We now have another question, number 7. In Brussels, the 4 major townhouses of the architect Victor Horta are example of Rococo art. Is that true or false? Well, Victor Horta was a Belgian architect and designer, and he was very famous for his curving styles, vegetable forms, which you can see here. And undoubtedly, he influenced many others, including Hector Guimard, and those who live in Paris know Hector Guimard for the decoration of the Paris Metro. The 4 hotels or townhouses mentioned here are the Hôtel Tassel, the Hôtel Solvay, the Hôtel Van Ettevelde, and the Hôtel Aubec, and all have the same characteristic style of Horta. And interestingly enough, at least 2, if not 3 of them were built for scientists Émile Tassel or Armand Solvay. And Horta, in some places, some houses, Horta actually went to design even the doorbell and the house number, so he was extremely involved in the constructions. He also created new furniture for some of them, and some of this new furniture you can find in the Musée d'Orsay in Paris, particularly the furniture which was in the Hôtel Aubec. Do we have any answers? Yes, we do. So, well, you're quite right, it is false. The 4 major townhouses built by Victor Horta in Brussels are not examples of Rococo art, but of Art Nouveau. Horta was actually one of the instigation of this stylistic revolution. So bravo for those, and most of you found the right answer. We have 3 more questions to go. Question number 8. The Arctic Circle region of Sweden, home of the Sami people, is the largest area in the world with an ancestral way of life based on the seasonal movement of livestock. Is that true or false? Well, here you've got a very pretty photograph of precisely a member of the Sami people gathering his herd and obviously moving and obviously feeding, as we can see, feeding the herd and on the very snowy and ground. The Sami people is one of the oldest people in not only obviously in Sweden but in the world, and very adapted to extreme conditions. So do we have any answers coming in? Yes, and you've all, mainly all answered true. That's perfect true. Every summer, the Sami lead their herds of reindeer towards the mountains through natural landscape, which up to now has been preserved, but is now threatened by the advent of cars and motor vehicles. So I have all for that answer. Question number 9. The Guinness Book of Records lists Prague Castle as the largest ancient castle in the world. Is that true or false? Well, here we've got the famous Bridge of Saint-Charles, we've got the castle at the back, and we've got, for the many millions of tourists that go to Prague, this is one absolutely typical view of the beautiful city of Prague and the palace and the castle, and of course the bridge. It is a really vast expander of territory, the castle I mean, reminiscent of other big castles like Windsor Castle. Windsor Castle is something over 50, I think 53 or 55,000 square meters. It's quite impressive. So I wonder if Prague Castle is bigger than Windsor Castle. Let's see what people think. Well, actually, the answer is true. The castle has been the seat of power for kings of Bohemia, Holy Roman Emperors, President of Czechoslovakia, and actually the current presidents of the Czech Republic. And it dates back to the 9th century and is about 150 meters long and about 130 wide. So actually Prague is the largest medieval castle in the world, was considered as the largest medieval castle in the world. So funnily enough, it is, well, funnily enough, I don't know, but certainly the proper answer is true. Now then we come to our last question. Schokland in the Netherlands, a World Heritage Site, used to be an island, true or false? So here we can situate where Stockland is. Of course, we're using here a map of today's map, and we could not. Had we shown you a map of medieval times, would we have had something different? Well, that's the whole question. You can see we're sort of northeast of Amsterdam, in the polder zones, and let's see. Do we have any answers coming up? Yes, we do. Absolutely. It is true. I suppose the whole of the Netherlands has been answering that question. It is still possible to see the Stockland was once an island. It was a peninsula to start with since prehistoric times, and then progressively became an island in medieval ages. It was only when the Zuiderzee was transformed into polders in between 1980 and 1940 that Stocklands was reunited with the continent. So well done for having found that good answer. I do hope you enjoyed the quiz and that you learnt much more about the rich and fascinating diversity of our shared cultural heritage. What we've just seen is a fabulous invitation to travel in Europe and beyond to discover and admire our heritage. So let's hope that we shall soon be free to do so. Let's see now how well we did in answering the quiz. Well, congratulations to Nicola, who got 9 out of 10 proper answers in 6 minutes and 20 seconds, and Jill Pasternak just behind him with the same number of answers, but in 16 seconds more. That is very, very clever of you. Congratulations to both of you, and congratulations to all that have participated in this quiz. Quite honestly, you all deserve to graduate with honours from our Cultural Heritage Travel Academy. It is now time to move on. We're getting close to 10:30. I'd just like to remind those who have joined us to answer the 4 questions, if you can, in the Kickoff fun session. You need to click on pose in the orange band on the right-hand side of the screen. There are just 4 questions to answer, and we'd really be delighted to know more about you. If you'd like others to get in touch with you, please don't hesitate to leave information about yourself in the second question, and we'll publish it in the live streaming. I'm now delighted to introduce Pascal Liévaux, Chair of the JPI Cultural Heritage, and to ask him to officially open the virtual launch of the JPI Cultural Heritage's Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. Pascal, I give you the floor.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you. Dear colleagues and friends, warm greetings from Paris, and welcome to the virtual launch of JPI Cultural Heritage Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. As chair and on behalf of the whole initiative member states, I thank you very much for gathering virtually with us to celebrate this launch of this important document and join the discussion about research on cultural heritage. As Charles said, I see that amongst you today, we see diverse backgrounds, universities and research centers, governmental agencies, national and regional alike, international and European delegations and organizations, but also museums, galleries, laboratories, etc., etc. In fact, more than 30 countries are presented here this morning. We witness vividly the binding force of cultural heritage in bringing us together despite this trying time caused by the pandemic. Research on cultural heritage thus becomes more and more indispensable to keep up with the new challenges and opportunities, as well as the international policy scene. Developing a new research and innovation strategy is an important stage in the life of JPI Cultural Heritage, a driving force in creating the European heritage science as a research field in its own right. The rich diversity of you, dear participants, is a strong evidence that heritage science is a very broad and totally transdisciplinary field that brings together the wide range of sciences, being social, experimental, engineering, digital, humanities, all sciences that participate in and enable the identification, understanding, conservation, restoration and transmission of our cultural heritage, be it tangible, intangible, digital, or natural. Back to the event itself, it will start with the launch of the SRIA 2020. An interpretation speech will follow, and then two keynote speeches. At the end, we will have a panel discussion session to answer all your questions and comments posted along the way. We hope that you're as excited as we are, so why not grab a cup of your morning coffee or tea? And if you are ready, without further ado, we are pleased now to introduce to you the brand new Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda.
An introduction to JPI Cultural Heritage. In 2008, facing great challenges that no country could tackle alone, the European Commission introduced Joint Programming Initiatives, a flexible intergovernmental process to better align the research and innovation investments and resources spent at national level. Among the 10 initiatives, JPI Cultural Heritage, with its many members, is the only one focusing mainly on the humanities. Directed by a governing board made up of representatives from all member countries and advised by an advisory and scientific board, our pillars and task forces carry out activities within the framework of the Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. This newly updated agenda identifies 4 priority research areas, supported by 7 underlying principles. First, a reflective heritage for a resilient society sees cultural heritage as an empowering force and a collective good for society. Second, sustainable management of cultural heritage explores participatory governance, the added value of heritage, and emerging technologies. Third, cultural heritage in a changing context touches upon urban and rural development, globalisation, demographic change, and tourism to investigate the positive and the negative implications for heritage. And finally, cultural heritage facing climate and environmental change focuses on both the impact of climate and environmental change on cultural heritage and heritage as a resource for sustainable development. We intend to complement the UN's SDGs and EU's Horizon Europe through improving research coordination of national programmes. By establishing heritage science as a research field in its own right in Europe and beyond, we are committed to the understanding of our past and to the building of our shared future in a worldwide context.
Well, thank you very much, Pascal, for this perfect launch of our SRIA. It is a great event. Well done. I also do hope that you all enjoyed the video presentation of the JPI and of the SRIA. You can download it by clicking on the icon in the top left-hand corner of your screen. You see, I told you would get some time to the top left-hand corner. And please don't hesitate to leave your comments or question in the Q&A box on the right-hand side so that we can address them later in the discussion session. I would like now to welcome our second speaker, Mrs. Catherine Warren. Catherine is Vice Chair of the JPI and Head of History, Heritage, Languages and Literature at the UK Arts and Humanities Research Council. Catherine, the floor is yours.
Good morning. I'm going to talk to you today about the update of the JPI Cultural Heritage Strategic Research and Innovation Agenda. To give you a little bit of background, our previous Strategic Research Agenda, SRA, was published in 2014 with the aim of presenting cultural heritage as a holistic, integrated research area and bringing together the diverse and potentially conflicting approaches used by the research and cultural bodies and institutions responsible for Europe's cultural heritage. In 2019, it was decided to update the SRA to take into account the evolving research landscape and to include new themes that needed to be addressed. The SRA was upgraded to a strategic research and innovation agenda to fully acknowledge the innovative nature of cultural heritage research. The SRIA 2020 is the result of a co-designed process involving all members of the JPI and their national consultation panels and mirror groups, and also the members of the JPI Advisory and Scientific Board. It involved designing a methodology, identifying gaps and needs, consulting members on their priorities, and considering what the most important challenges were that cultural heritage research would face in the next 5 to 10 years. Throughout 2019 and early 2020, several workshops were held and 4 focus groups worked more specifically on shaping the main research priorities, developing a reflective society, connecting people with cultural heritage, creating knowledge, and safeguarding cultural heritage resources. The new SRIA was published in the summer of 2020. In order to implement the SRIA and provide an ethical framework for research, 3 categories of tools have been identified: principles, priority areas, and operational instruments. The SRIA's principles. Throughout the consultation process, it was clear that there were some underlying principles that cut across all of the thematic priorities and that these needed to be clearly set out in the SRIA to express the JPI's commitment to high-quality cultural heritage research. A holistic approach. This principle reaffirms that cultural heritage includes tangible, intangible, and digital heritage, has many interfaces with natural heritage, and brings together diverse scientific disciplines. Collaborative and transdisciplinary research. This principle stresses the need for transdisciplinary and collaborative research undertaken within the JPI cultural heritage, involving other stakeholders, NGOs, and heritage professionals. Public-led research and community engagement. This principle recognises the importance and relevance of including citizens and communities in research projects from an early stage in order to develop co-designed and co-produced research and to enhance and widen the impact of the projects. Digital. This principle stresses the need to acknowledge the key role of new tools and technologies within cultural heritage research, and the need to address these instruments through critical digital studies approaches, taking into account their sustainability and accessibility. Education and training. This principle states that the JPICH, through capacity building, involvement of early career researchers, and collaboration with heritage actors and professionals, aims to promote inclusive research and gender, socioeconomic and ethnic diversity. Communication, dissemination and impact. This principle acknowledges that communication and dissemination of research results and findings, particularly towards the wider public, are essential. The economic, cultural and social impact of research must be considered, and knowledge-based policies and guidelines for the preservation and use of cultural heritage should be developed. Working with other initiatives and infrastructures. This principle stresses that the JPI Cultural Heritage is committed to working with other initiatives in Europe and beyond, such as the JPI Climate and HERA, Humanities in the European Research Area, in order to avoid duplication and foster coordination in efforts. The 4 priority areas. There are now 4 priority areas in the SRIA 2020, which stem from the priorities in the original SRA. The first is a reflective heritage for a resilient society. It focuses on the wider benefit of cultural heritage to society, on how people are at the core of cultural heritage, but also how they can be both an asset and a risk to cultural heritage. The second is sustainable management of cultural heritage. This priority focuses on the way governments, emerging technologies, research and innovation can enable sustainable management of cultural heritage, and a better engagement of stakeholders, communities and individuals. The third is cultural heritage in a changing context. Facing a rapidly changing context, it focuses on areas such as urban and rural development, globalisation and demographic change. It also addresses the question of tourism and mass tourism and the positive and negative implications they can have for cultural heritage. The fourth is cultural heritage facing climate and environmental change, and represents the main change from the first version of the SRA. It focuses both on the impact of climate and environmental change on cultural and natural heritage, and also the ways in which cultural and natural heritage can be used as a resource for mitigating climate change and for fostering sustainable development. Operational instruments. To implement these 4 priority areas, 3 different types of operational instruments are proposed. Funding instruments. The JPI Cultural Heritage has already run 6 transnational calls and funded 55 projects to a total of €29 million. The projects cover a range of themes across tangible, intangible and digital heritage. We will further develop the model of transnational calls based on one or more of the new priority research themes. To further maximise the impact of the JPI Cultural Heritage and enable the most inclusive opportunities for the projects and the researchers, alternative funding instruments will also be considered. For example, these could include impact accelerator calls to develop new knowledge exchange and engagement activities, targeted calls to underpin mobility and integration of new researchers, international networking calls to enable discussion and exchange between heritage researchers from participating countries and stakeholders from outside the JPICH, mini calls which could be used as stepping stones to longer projects, enabling the involvement of early career researchers, policymakers and communities. We will also foster a better coordination between JPICH calls and the national calls run by our partners in order to maximise the financial contributions of JPICH partners to joint funding calls. Finally, a new 5-year roadmap will be developed, along with an action plan to allow for transparency, thorough monitoring and evaluation of the joint activities. Networking instruments. These can take the form of outreach activities and workshops. Networking can be achieved through the Heritage Research Hub, the use of cultural diplomacy, the advisory group and the national consultation panels. Management instruments. Impact indicators and a communication strategy will be developed in order to maximise the impact of research projects and joint activities, and to raise the profile of the JPICH. These management instruments will enable the JPICH to continue to develop joint foresight capabilities through concerted research actions and policy coordination, and support the creation of a common action framework to reduce the fragmentation of cultural heritage research. The increasing role of JPI cultural heritage on the European and international scenes. The work that the JPICH has conducted over the last 10 years, in particular its involvement in major international programmes and its support to policymaking at European level, has helped to strengthen the position of Europe as an international leader in cultural heritage research. It has also helped to raise public awareness and to increase and strengthen international coordinated action through the creation of a European research area in cultural heritage. Within this European and international framework, the JPICH will continue to act as a hub, developing bespoke approaches to address priorities and challenges, and involving the relevant stakeholders of the global heritage research landscape, such as other JPIs, P2P networks and partnerships. The JPICH seeks to intensify the international collaborations it has initiated with the other JPIs, such as JPI Climate, or networks such as HERA, Humanities in the European Research Area, and to develop new ones. Research infrastructures. In October 2019, the JPICH signed a joint declaration with the European Research Infrastructure for Heritage Science, underlining the highly complementary nature of both initiatives for the structuring of the cultural heritage research community. Local, regional, national and global funders. New avenues for local, regional, national and global funding opportunities will be explored with a view to increase the reach of JPICH activities, such as with the Belmont Forum, structural and cohesion funds. Large projects and networks. The JPICH intends to pursue its objective to act as a hub, connecting different scale projects, thus contributing to the coordination and rationalisation of heritage science and of research on cultural heritage. International organisations and NGOs. The JPICH will update its concept papers to further strengthen heritage research beyond Europe, heritage policy making and cooperation with international organisations and NGOs. Horizon Europe. A number of challenges and drivers of the Horizon Europe work programme are in line with and complementary to the JPICH SRIA, especially in Cluster 2 focusing on culture, creativity and inclusive society. Synergies can also be found in other Horizon Europe clusters such as Cluster 3 on civil security and society and with other Directorates General, DGs of the European Commission, in particular with the DGs for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, and Communications Networks, Content and Technology, but also with the DG for Regional and Urban Policy, and the DG for Internal Market, Industry, Entrepreneurship and SMEs. A concept paper positioning the JPICH in relation to the wider European policy landscape will be produced after the final Horizon Europe programme has been published as an annex to this SRIA. Moreover, the JPICH will continue to promote coordination among member states in order to build a partnership on cultural heritage in the next 3 to 4 years. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. JPICH members wanted to highlight the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, as an underlying research principle for the JPICH activities, and to align the implementation of our research priorities with the implementation of the UN SDGs. The 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, adopted by all United Nations member states in 2015, provides a shared blueprint for peace and prosperity for people and the planet, now and into the future. At its heart are the 17 SDGs, which are an urgent call for action by all countries in a global partnership. To give a few examples, the SRIA connects with SDG 3, focused on good health and well-being, through Priority Area 1, with the aim to demonstrate the impact of cultural heritage on human well-being, for instance by studying its relationship to social cohesion, economic development, quality and sense of place, health and quality of life. SDG 4 focuses on quality education, which also corresponds to the underlying principle of education and training for the JPICH activities and research projects. Through all 4 priority areas, the JPICH will ensure inclusive and equitable education and will promote lifelong opportunities for all. SDG 10 focuses on reduced inequalities, and this is addressed through the first priority area of the SRIA, with the aim to explore the uniting and dividing abilities of cultural heritage. Please download and refer to the SRIA to learn more about the multiple connections between the United Nations SDGs and the JPICH priority areas. To conclude, I would like to underline that this new strategic research and innovation agenda highlights the overall actions and objectives of the JPI Cultural Heritage. It aims to stimulate and organise research in the field of cultural heritage, thus creating a dynamic and efficient European heritage science area. In that respect, this new SRIA supports the improvement of the coordination of research on cultural heritage at EU level by identifying short and long-term needs and priorities. It supports the concentration and increase of human, material and financial resources in the field of cultural heritage. It promotes multidisciplinary approaches. It aims to raise the profile of cultural heritage research to citizens, policymakers and stakeholders, and to build a European research area for cultural heritage research with the hope of raising it to an international level.
Thank you very much, Catherine, for such a clear explanation on how the SRA was developed. It was fascinating to see over 2 years how many people and members of the JPI were involved in this production and this conception of a document. It is also, you gave us also a marvelous, a very good understanding of its challenging and exciting aims and objectives. I am sure that it's going to raise lots of questions we're going to find in the question and answer box later on for our discussion session. And it was a very, very clear presentation. So thank you very much, Catherine, for that. I would like to remind our audience that are numerous, I understand that there are several hundred people listening to us, that you can leave your comments and questions in the Q&A box on the right-hand side, and that we shall obviously address them later. Time now for our 2 keynote speakers, and we are very honoured to welcome our first guest speaker, Dr. Maria Kayamanidou, Deputy Head of the Unit Cultural Heritage and Fair Societies at the Director General for Research and Innovation at the European Commission. Dr. Kayamanidou's speech will focus on the cultural heritage research and innovation strategy in Horizon Europe, creative, digital and green. Maria, the floor is now yours, and we are going to listen to you with great pleasure.
Thank you, Charles. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I am honored to be invited and wish to thank you for the opportunity to speak at this important event. I am happy that so many experts and professionals are gathered today to discuss the future strategy and research and innovation activities of the cultural heritage-wide sector. I tried to get into my slides, but I am not very successful. Yes, thank you. It is very timely and important as cultural heritage and the creative and cultural industries can bring much needed knowledge and innovation to the big challenges in front of us in the coming years. I am convinced that Horizon Europe, the framework program for research and innovation of the European Union, which is starting this year for 7 years duration, is a good way of getting involved. Therefore, I would like to use the opportunity to describe the new strategy for cultural heritage as it is designed into the program, since I believe it links to many of the interesting issues that will be analyzed at the conference today. For those who are familiar with Horizon Europe, research and innovation for cultural heritage, arts, and the creative and cultural industries is for the first time a clear destination area under Cluster 2, Culture, Creativity, and Inclusive Society of Pillar 2. It became a visible destination area for research and innovation because of its importance for social and economic development and of its inspirational role in shaping creativity. Cultural heritage sustains social cohesion, enhances environmental, cultural, economic, and community sustainability, creates employment and generates income from cultural assets, stimulates enterprise development, and fosters private investment. Equally important, cultural heritage contributes to the international attractiveness of the European Union, its values, and its quality of life. Yes, next slide, please. The new strategy supports the green and the digital cultural heritage. Research and innovation for a greener cultural heritage will focus on environmentally friendly materials and methods for the conservation, protection, and the restoration of tangible cultural heritage, including artifacts. These new materials, chemicals, or methods should be harmless for the health of operators and curators. Research will also contribute to inclusiveness and sustainability, as it will concern equally cultural landscapes, coastal and undersea cultural heritage. Research and innovation supporting digitization and online accessibility of cultural resources will boost innovation in architecture, filmmaking, music, gaming, cultural tourism, or representation of cultural assets, collections, and cultural sites. Digital means are also necessary to increasing access to cultural assets and allow museums and cultural institutions to broaden their audiences. Next slide, please. Support to creativity is another important target of this new strategy. Research and innovation on European identity and values are part of the agenda, as well as the growth and increase of competitiveness of cultural and inclusive and creative industries and sectors, and setup of spillovers with other sectors. An expected outcome of the program is to generate new jobs and innovation, to enhance cross-border circulation of operators, of stakeholders, and of activities, and to increase also cultural participation and social inclusion. Next slide, please. All these objectives are ambitious, but we do not start from zero. In the previous framework program, Horizon 2020, we invested more than 600 million euro in research and innovation activities on cultural heritage. This was realized through several societal challenges, including the Societal Challenge 6 for socioeconomic and political sciences research, as well as activities conducted from European Research Council, research infrastructures, and Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. Research applied to the preservation and repair of cultural heritage, tangible cultural heritage, the protection of endangered heritage from illicit trafficking and looting, the promotion of digital heritage, of cultural tourism, and of cooperation between museums and heritage sites, as well as research on arts. Next slide, please. In Horizon 2020, Cluster 2 will cover research and innovation on a wide range of domains of tangible, intangible arts and cultural and creative industries, cultural heritage. This is the so-called impact-oriented research. Activities will apply to the protection, restoration, safeguard, and valorization of cultural heritage and the arts, and will also promote the innovation and creativity capacity, as well as the competitiveness of the cultural and creative industries. In addition, the activities developed by Research Infrastructure Program, the European Research Council, as well as Marie Skłodowska-Curie, will continue promoting knowledge and capacity building for cultural heritage domain. Next slide, please. The good news are that the European Council and the European Parliament allocated a substantial budget to Cluster 2, 2.28 billion euro for the 7 years period from 2021 to 2027, almost twice the amount initially foreseen. The legal basis of Cluster 2 was also somewhere amended, and the cluster should now focus more than it was foreseen initially on cultural heritage, and it should contribute substantially to the research and innovation on cultural heritage and the cultural and creative industries and sectors, and in particular, to allow the establishment of a European cultural heritage collaborative space. This is much important for the development of a future inclusive policy on cultural heritage, where all 4 components, tangible, intangible, arts, and cultural and creative industries, will be concerned. This in a matricial way, not as 4 independent from each other parts of the program. In order to realizing it, multidisciplinary research and innovation will be necessary, as well as setup of extended multi-actor partnerships involving researchers, innovators, regional or local actors, stakeholders, companies, and creative and cultural industries, digital developers, civil society, and more than that. In addition, the ambition is high to settle a European partnership on cultural heritage. So its preparation will start from the first year of implementation of Horizon Europe and Cluster 2 in 2021, in order to make it a reality during the second strategic planning period of Horizon Europe. In 2021, the calls will be launched in spring, with deadlines early September, in order to perform evaluations and selection of proposals because the end of this year. Next slide, please. The key priorities for cultural heritage destination are much more holistic than in the past and apply in particular to the promotion, understanding, and engagement with cultural heritage through innovative approaches, new and emerging technologies, including digitization, as well as to safeguard and protection of tangible and intangible cultural heritage with cutting-edge technologies and restoration technologies, to the support of the emergence of new forms of cultural expression, including contemporary arts, the development of sustainable and inclusive cultural tourism in Europe, and the connection of the cultural heritage with the cultural and creative industries. Next, please. In a schematic way, in 2021 and 2022, in the intervention area of cultural heritage, 13 research and innovation action topics will be launched, as well as 2 coordination support actions under 3 main objectives. The green objective will apply in particular to the safeguard and protect of cultural heritage from the effects of climate change and natural hazards, to the development of green technologies and materials for the protection and restoration of cultural heritage, and to the development of greener and fairer way of life in creative and inclusive societies under the new European Bauhaus initiative. The digital-oriented activities will apply to the preservation and enhance of cultural heritage through advanced digital technologies, including 2-dimension, 3-dimension, augmented reality, and the use of artificial intelligence when it is necessary. The increase of collaboration among museums, including through digital means, including the cloud when it is judged useful. Develop new technologies and digital tools for the protection of artifacts and cultural goods from anthropogenic threats and looting, and to revive traditional craft techniques through cutting-edge technologies. The competitiveness and creativity part will apply to main topics: the increase of the potential of the international competitiveness of the European filmmaking and music industries, the promotion of European beliefs, values, and traditions at home and abroad, the games and culture shaping our society, the promotion of arts and increased creativity, and strengthening the competitiveness of cultural and creative industries. Next, please. Some websites and some other social media are at your disposal for more information on each of these components. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Maria, for such an interesting and informative presentation. I can see that has already sparked several questions and remarks, and we shall be able to address them in our question time later on. I was very interested in what you were saying and how you showed the very many implications of cultural heritage for Europe, shaping creativity, generating income, social cohesion, environmental sustainability, the international attractiveness of Europe, job creations, social inclusion. This is quite extremely wide areas in which cultural heritage has implication and brings together people. I thought that was a very interesting point. Interesting also the three objectives: green, digital, and competitiveness and creativity. Regarding digital heritage, we the JPI in collaboration with the French National Research Agency held last week on the 11th and 12th of March, a conference, which online conference, as all the ones we do nowadays, but which gathered over 700 participants with very, very interesting projects. And I think that would be a huge contribution to the objectives you just set out for us. I would also like to stress what you said about the very important investment of the European Commission in not only obviously in Horizon Europe, but what you are now doing in Horizon 20, but of course what is now going to be done in Horizon Europe for research, for promotion, for protection of cultural heritage, and the wider picture you painted for us, including cultural heritage with the Bauhaus initiative, the cultural and creative industries. There is there a very huge domain where we can work together and I believe do a lot for cultural heritage and for Europe. And if I may, Marita, is to thank you for your own personal involvement for the JPI. It is very, very widely appreciated. So thank you. We are now time for us to warmly welcome our second guest speaker, Professor May Kassar, who is Professor of Sustainable Heritage at University College London and who is the Director of the Institute for Sustainable Heritage at UCL. Her speech will focus on facing up to adaptation, role and responsibility for researchers. So for all of us who do research, we shall be listening to you with great interest and wondering what our responsibilities are going to be. May, your floor is yours.
Thank you very much indeed. My title is will look at adaptation and what the roles and responsibilities of researchers are. I took my inspiration from the SRIA, Priority Area 4, Cultural Heritage Facing Climate and Environmental Change, particularly Theme 1, Measuring and Responding to the Impact of Climate and Environmental Changes on Cultural and Natural Heritage, where the word adaptation appears on a number of occasions, and it does so also in theme 2. And so on the basis of that, I decided to focus, for the time I have available, on looking at adaptation. So we are all familiar with the parameters, the climatic parameters that impact on cultural heritage and the kind of risks and effects that we have observed and have measured as scientists and practitioners. So I won't read through the list because you've probably done that already, both on the left and the right. And it is quite telling that the image that we are seeing in the center is of a flood in Paris when the Seine overtopped. And these are the kind of major incidents that we expect to see and wish to avoid if at all possible. So how is adaptation defined? And I've taken the definition from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which is the adjustment in natural or human systems in response to actual or expected climatic stimuli or their effects, which moderates harm or exploits beneficial opportunities. And while we do focus in the majority on the negative aspects of climate change, there may also be beneficial opportunities that we need to be mindful of. But we are also very conscious of the fact that the impact of climate change globally is not equitable and that it hits harder some parts of the world than others. And I will explore later some of the issues that might arise, give a rise to that. So before I move on to talk exclusively about adaptation, I think it's worth looking at the relationship between adaptation and mitigation, which is quite complex. We have top left some examples of climate change parameters. And moving then from left to right, top left, top right, we do see that there are impacts on human and natural systems and that these need to adapt as a result of changes in the climate. If we go down to the double arrows, we see adaptation appearing again. And that is because there is a synergistic effect between the impacts on human and natural systems and socio and economic development paths that countries, individuals, institutions, regions may choose to follow. These will not only have an impact on adaptation, but also moving from bottom right to bottom left will also have an effect on the emissions and the concentrations of those emissions. And this is where mitigation comes into play. So the socio-economic development plans that we choose to take to follow will have impacts on both adaptation and mitigation. So that sets the scene for considering a little bit and unpacking a little bit the concept of adaptation. And that is an essential response to a changing climate. Though it is difficult in the majority, at least from my experience and in conversation with others, to actually come to terms with and really confront the extent to which we may need to adapt cultural heritage should climate change continue in an unrelenting way. But it is, in fact, a fundamental and essential response to a changing climate if the climate does not stabilize. So adaptation has two sides, and these are the two sides that I would like to briefly explore. There is adaptive capacity, and this has an internal reference. This is the capacity that each, that species, that we and in terms of the effect that we have on cultural heritage is that capacity that we have internally. It's the internal reference point that we have to adapt. Then there is the adaptive potential. And this is the distance to be traveled from where we are at the moment to where we want to get to. Adaptive capacity, I will show you in an instance, we are tackling already. It is adaptive potential that we have still quite a bit of work to do. So practitioners are working with the adaptive capacity of cultural heritage already in two key ways: by applying best practice in heritage management, and these include, for example, rigorous inspection and more frequent monitoring and maintenance, shifting to frequent minor repairs and reducing the need for major repairs, because in an extreme event, it is those major repairs that can become catastrophic. And in implementing behavioral change, and this is accepting and recording losses, because whether we admit it publicly or whether we admit it privately, it has occurred to all of us, I am sure, that losses are inevitable. And therefore, in accepting that there are going to be losses, we can be prepared to memorialize and make sure that the future knows what we have lost by ensuring that that cultural heritage is recorded. We could also consider relocating heritage, but here we need a refinement of that concept of relocating heritage, because we have to be mindful of the significance and the context of cultural heritage before the enormous decision is made regarding relocation. And then the managing of realignment or retreat, the slow and progressive move away, for example, from the coast as storm surges and sea level rises and high tides make it impossible or much more difficult to defend the coast. And here is an historic example of an excellent historic example of adaptive potential being realized in practice. These are the wooden churches in the Carpathian mountain areas of Central Europe, where on the left-hand side, you can see the low splashboard, which I have circled, which was constructed to protect the wooden sill beam on which the entire building rests. And this protected against wetting, because that would in fact have weakened the building eventually. Over time, this low splashboard was transformed into a raised and enclosed arcade. And some might know, but others might ask why that was done. And that is because the dispersed shepherding communities used to travel overnight for Sunday Mass, and they needed a shelter in which to rest overnight, protected from the weather for early morning Mass on a Sunday. And that raised and enclosed arcade provided the shelter. So how can researchers contribute to our understanding of adaptive potential of a society or of a community's heritage? I believe it is the role and responsibilities of researchers to speak for one or more of these three fundamental questions before designing research questions for their projects around adaptive potential. And these three questions are there well-developed political systems? Are there well-developed institutional systems? And are there well-developed technological support systems? So to go back to the first question, are there well-developed political systems? one could say that in Europe, we are very lucky that we have well-developed political systems, and in other parts of the world as well. But there are other parts of the world where there are not well-developed political systems. So can researchers contribute to their development? And for these researchers, I'm thinking of those from public policy, political science, social science, though not exclusively, because if you combine that with heritage science, then you're beginning to see a cross-disciplinarity that is a true reflection of our field. My next question is, are there well-developed institutional systems? And if not, can researchers contribute to their development? And here I would identify researchers from at least legal, finance, administration, and business backgrounds, as well as the more traditional curatorial, conservation, and heritage science fields. And are there well-developed technological support systems? If not, can researchers contribute to their development? And this, I believe, researchers that we are all familiar with are already making great strides, because these are researchers from heritage and environmental science, conservation, and design, who could invite researchers from legal, finance, administration, and business, public policy, political science, and social science in order to begin to address these complex problems of adaptive potential in a more holistic way. So what kind of research questions need addressing? We value what has naturally evolved and weathered. So how do values evolve as cultural heritage changes? Does the speed of change affect our values, or do our values stay the same? How do we balance vulnerability and value in adaptation measures? Do we always effectively integrate value in our research and in our heritage science research in particular? What solutions in other climates that we may yet experience have to offer? So could we look globally around the world and identify who already is going through some of the climates that we may be beginning to be experiencing ourselves, and see what solutions that they are coming up with? How can scientific research inform social decisions on what cultural heritage to save? We need evidence that is reliable and robust enough to understand and value change, because we can no longer avoid the adaptation challenge. And another challenge that I put to all fellow researchers is that, are we publishing in the right places, including high impact journals? And how will our research be assessed by the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, for example, which is taking a very serious and current interest in the impact of climate change on cultural heritage? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Professor Kassar, for such an inspiring talk that addressed important issues for everybody, actually, just not only for researchers. I was extremely interested by the way you very clearly presented the problems, the huge impact of climate change on heritage, the complex relations between adaptation and mitigation. I think that was a very clear and challenging explanation. The adaptations we need to do, and particularly cultural heritage needs to do. Also, I enjoyed your way of presenting that adaptive capacity and potential and the difference between both of them, the three fundamental questions on the political, institutional, and technological support systems that we have, and finally the research questions, and the very last one on publishing for those of us who publish, and we all do publish, it's a very, very important question. And no doubt we'll come back to this in the question time we are going to have. So a great thank you for what you brought to us this morning. I think it's going to allow all of us to be able to reflect on our future. Before we move to the discussion session, I would like to inform everybody that we are now running a questionnaire on the JPI and on the SRIA in the poll section, which is on the top corner of your screen. So please do not hesitate to go onto poll, click onto the questionnaire and answer the questions which are there. It is very important for us to know your opinion on this SRA, on the JPA, of course, and it will help us to move forward and bring the JPI and the SRA up to your expectations. For the moment, let's start the discussion session. I see that Maria Gamayunidu is there, Catherine Warren is there as well. So Catherine, can you turn on your, I think you need to turn on your microphone, and May, can you turn on your microphone? Because you're all going to be the panel now, and I think questions are going to be addressed to you. So do we have questions, and how do I see the questions? Here we are. Okay. So we have got several ones. I think the first one will be for Catherine. When you talked about, just for you, Catherine, when you talked about the funding instruments, what are the near future plans of JPI cultural heritage in terms of calls? Would you like to answer that, Catherine, or?
Yes, thank you, Charles. So we have been having conversations within the partners within the JPI about future funding calls. Ideally, we would hopefully have a funding call each year, and looking across the new themes within the SRIA to identify topics for calls. As we talked about, one of the major changes in this SRIA was the importance of climate change and environmental change and the links with heritage research. And we are very keen to launch a call on this topic. And we are in discussions at the moment with JPI Climate, one of our fellow JPIs, about the possibility of running a joint funding call. And hopefully, if this goes ahead, it would be in 2022. We're talking about calls within the JPI cultural heritage, and particularly, as I mentioned earlier, wanting to offer funding calls for a wide variety of researchers and thinking about how we can target early career researchers, people at different stages of their funding, their research career, and also different types of funding. So thinking about potentially networking funding to bring researchers together from a wide range of backgrounds and countries. And the possibility of running a call potentially later this year into next year within the JPI, which does have different types of funding available. So thinking more about early career researchers. These conversations are at an early stage, and we had a conversation within the JPI partners at the end of last year. We have a small task force which is looking at future calls and programming, which is led by Charles, I think. And so that will continue into this year. And as soon as we have any information about calls, we will advertise these on the Heritage Hub.
Thank you very much, Catherine. That's absolutely true. I think as you say, quite rightly say, the call on with the JPI cultural, JPI climate is going to be the main one in the next coming years. It's going to be a very important one. Another question, I think this will be for Maria. Can you elaborate a bit more about the new European Bauhaus program and the role research will play in this interesting new initiative? So Maria, I'm sure you've got some.
Yes. Thank you very much. It is a very important project which is at the same time architecture and urbanism driven. It brings the Green Deal at the heart of the system. It is aesthetic and it brings the sustainability principle on that. What we are going to do, we are focused on architecture, with a strong participation of citizens. We will work on the built environment. I would say we have not limitations. It is not limited to towns, small towns, metropoles, or rural areas. It is everywhere. Citizens, they want to creating something new in terms of rehabilitation or new space, including old buildings like industrial heritage, which are abandoned, and they would like to take care of that. They should involve, of course, architects, but also cultural and creative industries to make sure that the aesthetic part is there. They should be green and sustainable, and they should be inclusive, because this is a very societal project. Inclusive means, and I can give only examples of that, transgenerational, for example, in case of buildings, include green spaces when possible, create a living style, and make added value for society. This is a research topic which will be launched, very much multidisciplinary. Civil society, local authorities, in addition to architects and urbanists and specialists for Green Deal, because technologies should be used in a way of the Green Deal targets, and societal good is the ultimate objective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anybody want to add something to what Maria said? No. Okay. Shall we move on to the following question? This is more sort of what I'm going to say technical question, but will we be able to have your presentations, Maria and May, or is it something that we'll be able to send to the participants? Maria, will we be able to have yours as well?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so that's reassuring for those who asked that question. We have got another question on, I think this could probably go for Catherine and Maria, because I think two answers would be complementary. How do you think the SRA would complement to the EU's policies and initiatives on cultural heritage research? And I think we get both entries from both of you. That would be interesting. So, Catherine, would you like to start from the SRA point of view, and then Maria could add on from the European point of view?
Yes, thank you. I think seeing the presentation before from Maria, we could see that there are a lot of synergies between the plans within Horizon Europe and also within the JPI cultural heritage. And it's really reassuring to see the presence of humanities and cultural heritage within Pillar 2 of Horizon Europe. I think this is a good time for the JPI. I think we have refreshed the SRIA just as we are moving into the new framework programme, and so we can start to address some of the challenges that both the European Commission see as important and that we saw as important through the consultation that we did within our member countries and also with our own scientific committee. And so I think this is a good time for the JPI to be thinking about how we move forward, how we make sure that we add value by collaborating across the member states, thinking about how we collaborate beyond those partners we already have within the JPI, how we collaborate beyond Europe as well, to make the most of the research that we are undertaking and the activities that we're carrying out. And I think this is the time for us to be looking more broadly and to be thinking about those big challenges, as we've said, particularly thinking about climate change and heritage, and thinking about how we as JPI partners can make more of a difference than we can do as national funders. And so complementing that funding that will be available through the European Commission to make that wider impact and to really add value.
Thank you, Catherine. Maria, can you?
Yeah, absolutely. We have the same objectives, and I am very happy for that. We wanted to be inclusive, but inclusiveness is not exclusiveness. And the domain is very wide. The needs are numerous. We cannot overlap because we will focus, and we have limited means despite the important budget we have received. And from your side, you will focus also on activities. I am sure this was the case up to now. We were very much complementary. and we will continue being complementary in order to cover the wider range of priority topics possible in the next 7 years.
Thank you very much, both of you. I'd like just to chip in a little question here for May about publishing, because I wanted to know what you had as an idea behind the problem of the impact of our publishing, and particularly in our journals. We don't have anything like the Lancet, or which is sort of worldwide known and sort of everybody goes to it for health problems. What do you feel about the publishing problems that face cultural heritage researchers in cultural heritage?
I think we need to publish in more in journals that speak to our community of practitioners, but also be mindful of the fact that the scientific literature is generally what is sought after in the assessment reviews that are done by the IPCC, though it is changing somewhat its approach to what it considers to be scientific literature. Because it is interested now also in considering a much wider effect and impact of climate change on communities, who may collect evidence in a non-academic way, shall I put it. Mm. However, those of us that work in an academic environment and do academic and scholarly research need also to ensure that the corpus of literature that we produce is of the highest possible quality, so that it stands up to scrutiny, because we know, we see, and we understand the impact that is happening on climate change, on cultural heritage, but that the evidence that is published is not as persuasive sometimes as the evidence that we see on the ground. And therefore, it is ensuring that there is an uplift in the quality of the literature, and we continue to drive towards ensuring that the evidence is published and available and accessible, so that open access is a big issue for our sector, because the cost that sometimes publishers charge to make that literature available is horrendously high and not affordable by the largest number of practitioners that need to manage cultural heritage on the ground.
Thank you very much. It's a very important issue, the open access. Thank you very much for that, May. We now have a question from Conrad von Ballen, which I shall read to. Participation from researchers to the JPI Cultural Heritage course depended on the commitment of the funding bodies of the countries, together with, I can't read underneath, the employing organizations of the researcher belongs. So depending on the employing organizations the researchers belongs. This in some cases, for example, in Belgium, is very restrictive. Will that change? What would be done to overcome this challenge? Not quite sure who would like to answer that question, because actually it's not the JPI who's responsible for the funding bodies. So I don't, not quite sure who could we, I don't know.
Shall I chip in with this one?
Yes, okay, Catherine.
Looking at the questions, I think there's a similar question coming up about sort of a Danish partner being able to apply as well. Currently, our funding calls are limited to the funding bodies and the partners involved within the JPI. When we run a funding call, we have commitment from those different countries and those different funding bodies, and we each put money into a pot to run those funding calls. Usually calls, we ask for there to be 3 countries involved. So a research project would need to have participants from those 3 countries. And if successful, then the relevant funding body from that particular researcher's country funds their part of the project. So for example, if we had a funding project that came from the UK, France and Netherlands, it would be the funders from those 3 countries that funded their relevant researchers, which does mean that it wouldn't be possible for somebody from another country to receive funding if their funder wasn't involved in the call. I think it is possible to have an associate partner within a project, so that could come from a country who isn't directly being funded, but unfortunately it wouldn't be possible to fund that person, so they would need to fund their own time or have another source of funding to be able to take part in that project. It's something that we can look at within the JPI partners. I think the problem that we face is that each of us come from different funders in different countries. We each have our own limitations and rules that we have to follow to meet our own funding requirements. And so it's a matter of finding a common ground and to find eligibility criteria that we can all agree with. It's something that we can take away and discuss. And obviously we do want to broaden the reach of the JPI. We are keen and we are having conversations with other partners from other countries who aren't currently involved, and to think about trying to improve or increase the membership of the JPI so that we can reach more countries across Europe. But it is something that we'll continue to discuss.
Yeah, thank you very much, Catherine. I think that, as you quite rightly say, that also answers a question from a Danish colleague. So how could a Danish player apply? I think exactly the same question. I think time is slightly running out, so I think we shall take the last question for today. And this last question is actually for May. Professor Cassar, you mentioned the beneficial opportunities arising from climate change. Can you be more precise about this point? That was the question.
Yes, certainly. I was saying that in the context of opportunities that there might be for researchers. We tend to focus on the negative impact of climate change on cultural heritage. I'll give you one example. Herschel Island in the Yukon Territory in Canada. It's on the Beaufort Sea. This is just one example. This has been registered and logged by both ICOMOS and UNESCO. The sea ice is melting, and the early whaling settlements have emerged from the ice. So they emerge from the ice temporarily because there are sea surges that take place now, and the ground is slumping, and these early whaling settlements that had previously been preserved under the ice are now being lost to the sea. So there is a window of opportunity in situations like this for researchers to record, sample, and make sure that some research and recording is done. And the beneficial opportunities I have spoken about, I was being specific about opportunities for researchers to actually do something before something is completely lost.
Thank you very much, May, and thank you very much all the members of the panel. This was, of course, as usual, a short time for discussion, and I think we all regret not to have more time. But anyhow, the questions and answers we've had, and particularly the answers you all gave us, was extremely interesting and give us a lot of thought for later on. This marks the end of this discussion session. And I would like to remind the audience that there is this questionnaire about the JPI cultural heritage and the SRIA in the polls section. And I do encourage you to go and answer the questionnaire. Again, we do need a feedback from you. That is, it is very important for all of us. It is now time for me to pass the floor again to Pascal Liévaux, the chair of the JPI Cultural Heritage, for the concluding remarks. And thank you again to all of you for attending this session. Pascal, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, Dr. Kayamanidou. Thank you, Professor Cassar, for the very enriching discussion and the presentations. And many thanks again to our participants who have posted inspiring questions and insightful comments. We do hope that now you got to know more about JPI Cultural Heritage and its strategic research and innovation agenda. Although it's time to say goodbye, we believe that for sure this is a new step forward for our heritage research community. I thus encourage you to check out our initiative from time to time. and stay connected with us, and more importantly, stay connected with each other through our new website, the Heritage Research Hub. It is your website. Simply sign up there. You could then share and search for different contents, including news, events, funding, and training opportunities. You can also open vacancies on heritage science. And before I leave you, I would like to invite you to Brussels on 21 and the 22nd of October of this year for 2 days of, we all hope, post-pandemic face-to-face exchanges on heritage sciences in Europe. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Finally, I would like to say that I'm convinced that thanks to its vast, varied, and outstanding heritage, and to the high quality and numerous skills of its citizens, Europe is in the right position to become the world leader in cultural heritage research and innovation. It has the capacity to defend and protect its own past, and also to offer technological solutions for the management and planning of cultural heritage assets in a transparent, ethical, and democratic manner to the benefit of all inside and outside its boundaries. And I can assure you that the JPI Cultural Heritage is fully committed to contribute to the understanding of our past and to the building of our shared future in Europe and worldwide. Thank you all for your attention and for your participation.